Very good afternoon, all of you. Yesterday we started our last unit, probability and linear algebra. So we started with some fundamentals of probability, then laws of probability. I hope after the class you gone through the fundamentals and solved some typical examples so that you are fresh to this class and you remember all those fundamentals, because all the lectures are dependent on previous lectures. So if you miss something from the previous lecture, there is a chance that you may not understand the concept of current lecture. Okay, so with this we will start, and in this particular lecture we will start with the Bayes theorem on probability. So nowadays, when we talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning and other techniques, so many a times we heard the word Bayes theorem or application of Bayes theorem for various disciplines. So this is very important theorem, and we will try to understand the Bayes theorem with the help of one example, and then we will go into the mathematics. And while discussing the example, you need to understand the logic behind it. Okay, so suppose a system is there, let's say a personal computer, and it consists of n subsystem. For example, monitor is one subsystem, CPU, mouse, keyboard. So a computer system is a overall system, and it has n number of subsystems that we are assuming. Now, at initial level, the probability of failure of each subsystem is known to you. That is called as prior event. So this information is already available. For example, suppose HP is manufacturing the personal computers, then from their sale and the feedback received from the customer, from the maintenance data, they can find out the probability of failure of each subsystem. So that priori information we may have. Similarly, the probability of system failure, given that the subsystem has failed, is also known for all subsystems. So what I wanted to tell here, suppose a system is failed, then what is the probability that system is failed given that a given particular subsystem has failed? So that conditional event we already discussed, conditional probability that we discussed, the same thing is here. So this data is also known to us. So if a randomly a system fails, then what is the probability that the system is failed because of this particular subsystem? So this is how we can interpret the same. And again, I am saying this data is also available with us. Now, in many cases, we have to calculate the probability of subsystem failure under the condition that the system has already failed. So in second bullet, what we have, the probability of system failure given that the subsystem has failed. But in sentence number 3, we are talking in a reverse order. That is, what is the probability of subsystem failure given that the system has already failed? So this is the part in which we may be interested to know, and we have certain prior information. Which prior information we have? Probability of failure of each system, so each subsystem, that data we have. Probability of system failure given that the subsystem has failed, that data we also have. And we are interested in probability that the subsystem is failed given that the system is already failed state. So such type of modeling is generally done by Bayes theorem, or in some other words, the same thing we can express as, given that the system has failed, we may inquire evaluating the probability that this has occurred because of the failure of a particular subsystem. And this type of problem, as already mentioned, many a times such type of problems we solve by using Bayes theorem. And that's why Bayes theorems are very, very important, especially when we talk about the range. So suppose there is a 90% chance that the rain will take place in Satara district. There is a 80% chance that the rain will be there in the Nagar district. Again, we know that there is a 20% chance that the rain will be there in the Pune district, given that the rain is already there in Satara district. And similarly, so many conditions are given to you, and we asked, if there is a rain in the Pune today, then what is the probability that there is a rain in the Satara? So the reverse case. So such type of modeling is done by using Bayes theorem. Now we will go into the mathematics of Bayes theorem. So okay, so consider event A. Let's say this is at system level, and that can be expressed as the events B1, B2, B3 up to Bn. So here we can say that event A is a top level event, and the occurrence of event A can be expressed in terms of events B, B1, B2, B3 up to Bn. So what priori information we will have? The probability of occurrence of event B1, probability of occurrence of event B2, B3 up to Bn. So all these prior information we have. Similarly, we also have one more information, that is conditional probability, that probability of occurrence of event A given that B1 has already occurred. Similarly, probability that event A occurred given that B has already occurred. And similarly, you can see there are other event probability that event A will occur given that Bn has already been occurred. So individual probability and conditional probability values are already known to us. So this information is already available with us. Now we are interested in posterior events. And what is that? Probability of occurrence of event B1 given that A has already occurred, or probability of event B2 given that A has already occurred, and so on. And last event could be probability of occurrence of event Bn given that A has already occurred. So this is just the mathematical explanation of the given example. So you can see here this particular individual probability and conditional probabilities are available with us. And when you compare this probability, conditional probability events, these are the just a reverse of those in which we are interested. Now, in order to get the Bayes formula to solve such type of problem, what we do, we use the laws of probability. And yesterday we discussed probability of A intersection Bi is equal to probability of Bi multiplied by probability of A given that Bi has already occurred. Same thing we can express in a different way, that is probability of A intersection Bi is equal to probability of occurrence of event A multiplied by probability of occurrence of event Bi given that A has already occurred. So these are the two different ways through which we can express the probability of A intersection Bi. Now what we will do, we will equate the right side of these two equations. And when we equate these two equations, then we get probability of A multiplied by probability of Bi given that A has already occurred is equal to probability of Bi multiplied by probability of occurrence of A given that Bi has already occurred. Now we will just simplify this particular equation and we will express in terms of probability of occurrence of BI given that A has already occurred. And this is equal to, or this is what we were looking for, posterior event. And on right side you can see that PBI into PA given that BI has occurred divided by PA. So when we look at this particular equation, this is called as Bayes equation. And when we look at this equation carefully, we can easily say that all the values on the right side are already known to us. You can check statement number 1 where all these values are already known to us. And if you have those values, then we can calculate the probability of occurrence of event BI given that A has already occurred. Now in this equation, the probability of event A can be expressed in a different way. For example, the probability of occurrence of event A is expressed here in terms of events B1, B2, B3 up to Bn that you already know. And therefore, probability of occurrence of event A is nothing but the summation of all the events corresponding to probability of occurrence of event Bi multiplied by probability of occurrence of event A given that Bi has already occurred. And same thing we will put in above equation. And when you put that equation, we will get final equation of Bayes theorem or Bayes equation. And how we can read it? Probability of occurrence of event Bi given that A has already occurred is equal to probability of occurrence of event Bi multiplied by probability of occurrence of event A given that Bi has already occurred divided by summation I is equal to 1 to n, and inside summation probability of occurrence of event Bi multiplied by probability of occurrence of event A given that Bi has already occurred. So this is how we derive the equation for Bayes theorem. So in previous slide we saw one example, and now we converted the same way into a mathematical equation. Now we will see one example through which you will understand why we need Bayes theorem, and we will take an example from a medical field. So in medical field we know that suppose a person is alcoholic, then there is a chance that in future after few years he may get a problem related to his liver diseases. So you might be interested in finding out a patient's probability of having liver disease if they are alcoholic. Suppose there are 1000 patients and they got liver diseases. Then you may be correlating what is the probability that the person will be alcoholic and he got a liver disease. So such type of value we may be interested, because alcoholic is not the only reason of getting liver disease. There are so many other reasons, but we are interested in the alcohol, how it is causing the liver diseases. So we will try to model this particular problem. That is, first of all, we will start with a person being an alcoholic is the test for the liver disease. So this is the first event we define, that a person being alcoholic is the test for liver disease. Then let's consider an event A, and it says the patient has a liver disease, and the probability of occurrence of event A based on the past data is 0.1. So we are defining event A. What is the meaning of A? Patient has a liver disease and its probability of occurrence is 0.10, that is 10%. Now we will define another event B, and it means the patient is an alcoholic. So event B defines that the patient is alcoholic, and from past data it is observed that the probability of occurrence of event B, that is the person is being alcoholic, is 0.05. So these two information we have, that the probability of occurrence of event A, probability of occurrence of event B. These are data point, these values we have. Now, it is also observed that among these patients diagnosed with liver disease, 7% are alcoholic. So whatever number is there for patient with liver disease, out of that 7% patients are alcoholic. So they drink the alcohol regularly. So how will we define this? The probability of occurrence of event B given that A has already occurred is equal to 0.07, which is given, or probability that the patient has a liver disease given that he is alcoholic, and its answer is 0.07. This is how we can solve. Then we will apply the Bayes theorem. So Bayes theorem, we know that we just in a simple way we write the equation for Bayes theorem, and in which value we are interested, the probability that the patient has a liver disease given that he is alcoholic. So probability of occurrence of A is known to us, that is patient has a liver disease, the 0.1 is the probability. Then probability of occurrence of event B given that A has already occurred, this probability is 0.07, and probability of occurrence of event B, that is the patient is an alcoholic, is 0.05, and upon simplification you will get answer as 0.14. So this is the example where if we know the probability that the patient has a liver disease is known, probability that the patient is alcoholic is known to us, again probability that the patient is alcoholic given that he has a liver disease is known to us. So bullet number 3, 4, 5 are known to us, and what we are calculating, probability that the patient has a liver disease and at the same time he is alcoholic. So that value we can calculate by using Bayes theorem. Now we will move ahead. Now all what we discussed in yesterday's session and up to this point, that we talked about probability. So many a times we use the word event, and when we call event, then subsequently after some time we started calling a variable, because that is also important way and important approach to express the data in a generalized way. So we need to understand what is variables, what is a random variable, and here we are especially interested in discrete variables and continuous variable. You might have already studied this, but briefly we will go through it. So discrete variables are those variables the value of which can be determined. Sorry, it is not discrete, it is deterministic. So in case of machine design, for example, when you studied the gear design, then you came across this equation. SB is equal to MB sigma BY, where SB is the beam strength of the gear tooth, and it can be calculated by using this formula. So if you know all of these values, then you can easily get the value of beam strength of the gear tooth, and that can be determined by using other values. So it is also called as deterministic value. So if all the values M, B, sigma, By are known to you, you can calculate the value of SB. So the beam strength is, when you are talking about the beam strength of a gear tooth, then it can be a deterministic variable because it can be determined if other values are known to you. Then second type is random variables. So In deterministic, we can calculate the value, but in case of random variables, there is no scope for calculating the exact value. So in that case, we go for random variables. We'll take one example. For example, if you want to know what is the population of Pune city, so you can count one by one and you can find out what is the population of Pune city. But if I ask you that out of the all the population of Pune city, how many people are alcoholic, then can you directly find out the value? If you ask somebody that are you alcoholic, he will not tell you the answer. But if you start collecting the data from the police record or from the hospitals, where you can come to know that how many people might have drunk or that they do drunk. So exact count you will not get, but you can express that in terms of probability. So that variable is called as a random variable, because here you are not doing the whole population analysis. Now let's take one example, two, three examples of random variables. For example, if you roll a dice or a coin, then what will be its outcome? The outcome will be either head or tail. So during the toss, can you determine either it will be head or tail? No. So that is unpredictable. So in that case, that variable, whatever will be the outcome, that will be called as a random variable. If you roll a dice, so dice has a 6 sides. So at the time of rolling, you never know what will be the outcome, which face will come. So that outcome is unpredictable, so it is called as a random variable. Similarly, suppose you have a television set, and if somebody asks, tell me when your telephone is going to fail, do you have answer? No. So that is called as a random variable, which is also called as failure time or time to failure of the television set. Then the random variables are also called as stochastic variables or variates. So these are the alternative names. Now, when we talk about the randomness where outcome is unpredictable, just like a tossing a coin, we don't know it will be a head or tail. It may be head, maybe tail, we don't know. So it can be classified into two types. First one is a discrete and second one is continuous. From word itself you can easily understand. So discrete random variables can take only certain specified discrete values within a range. For example, if you toss a coin, then outcome will be either head or tail. So these are the two discrete values, right? Outcomes. So this is called a discrete random variables. Similarly, if you roll a dice, so dice has a 6 faces, and if there are numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then outcome will be either 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. It will not be 7, it will not be minus 1, it will not be 5.5. So these are the discrete outcomes. So these are the examples of discrete random variables. Again, number of defective items in a sample selected randomly from a population. Suppose you have a lathe machine, on that you manufactured 100 shafts. So if you want to know how many rejected shafts are there, which doesn't fall into the design requirement, so it will be discrete value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It will not be 2.5, 3.5. So this is also the example of discrete random variable. Then when we talk about continuous random variable, it means the variable can take any real value within its range. This range is very important. For example, suppose there is a turbine and you want to measure the pressure inside the turbine. So if you know the range of that pressure from, let's say, 0 to 50 bar, then the pressure at a given time can take any value between 0 to 50 bar, right? So it will take infinite number of values between the range. So this is the example of continuous random variable. Suppose you want to measure the height of a person from a Pune city. It will take any value, right, from a given range. Similarly, mass, weight, density, volume, temperature, and distance. So these are the variables which can take any value between a given range. So that's why they are called as continuous random variable. So in simple words, what we can understand from this slide, the variable of which the value can be determined if we know the remaining values, it is called as a deterministic variable. Whenever a variable is there whose value can be unpredictable, difficult to count, predetermination is very difficult, then they are called as random variables. Again, the random variables are classified into discrete random variable and continuous random variable. When we say discrete means within a given range, there are discrete number of values will be there. For example, tossing a coin, either it will be head or a tail. So these are the two discrete values. In case of continuous random variable, it will take any random value between a given range. For example, pressure inside a boiler, let's say. So if the range is 0 to 50 bar, then at a given time pressure can take any value between 0 and 50. Then we will move ahead and we will see now the Poisson distribution and binomial distribution. So this part is already, I hope you already studied this. So briefly we will try to touch the binomial distribution as well as Poisson distribution. So long back in 16th century, Jacob Bernoulli derived this binomial distribution. However, officially it is published in 1713 and it has a large number of applications. Okay, so some of the examples are, in a given lot of components, what is the probability that there will be two or less number of bad components? So this question generally come in manufacturing systems. So such type of problems can be solved by binomial distribution. Another example, in a passenger aircraft, suppose there are 4 engines, and for successful flight, the aircraft required at least 2 engines must be in operations. Then we may ask a question, what is the probability that the aircraft will successfully carry out the flight? So that question may come. Again, out of 200 buses commissioned by a transport company, what is the probability that at least 150 of them will be in operating after a year of commissioning? So these are the some of the examples where we can reach to the solution by using binomial distributions. But the binomial distributions have some assumptions. For example, there are only 2 possible outcomes for each trial. If you toss a coin, either it will be head or tail. Or in case of manufacturing system, compound will be either good or bad. There will be a success or failure, go or no go. So only 2 outcomes will be there, yes or no, here or there. Intermediate state will not be considered in binomial distribution. So these are mutually exclusive and exhaustive set of events because it is biased either this side or that side. Then the probability of success is expressed as P, and which is constant for every trial. This is also another assumption. All trials are independent. For example, if you toss a coin for first time and second time, it is independent. There is no correlation. The number of trials are finite. So you can toss a coin for 100, 200, 300 times. So that number of tossing a coin is finite. Then the sum of probability of success and probability of failure is unity. For example, if you toss a coin for 100 times, you may get tail for 14 times and you may get head for 16 times. So probability of getting head is 40 divided by 100. Probability of getting tail is, let's say, 60 by 100. Then answer will be 1. So if this is probability of success, that is getting head, and this is the probability of getting tail, that is probability of failure, then answer always 1. So this is how we made certain assumptions before we using the binomial distribution. So that understanding you should have. Now we will go into the mathematics. So let x be the discrete random variable. So you can see here the variable is discrete random variables. The number of rejections are always discrete random variable. Tossing a coin, rolling a dice, discrete random variables. Representing the number of successes in independent trials where probability of success on each trial is constant, which is p, and x will take the value from 0, 1 to up to n. Then the binomial probability density function is given as. So this is the equation for binomial probability density function. Okay, we will come to the details of each and every part of this equation later, but this is the probability density function. Then x represents the number of successes. Then 1 minus p is p is the talks about the success. 1 minus p talk about failures, or 1 minus p is also denoted as q, where this particular term is called as binomial coefficient. Okay, because you can, from the formula you can say it is the binomial, and it is also called as coefficient. The mean is calculated by NP, where n is the number of data points and p is the probability of success or trials being given output as success. Variance can be calculated as NPQ, total number of samples, number of successes multiplied by number of failures, where p is probability of success and q is probability of failure. Q is nothing but 1 minus q, you can see here. Then one more measure is there, just like probability density function, there is a cumulative distribution function, and which is given by this equation. So you can use this particular formula to calculate the cumulative distribution function. Okay, so if I start explaining mathematically, then you may feel difficulty to understand these equations. Directly we will go to examples where you will understand in a better way. So let's take example. Let x be the discrete random variables representing the number of failed components among 5 independent and identical components, of which each component has one chance in 100 failing. So how many components are there? 5 components are there, and the probability of failure is also given 1 in 100. So 1 divided by 100, so 0.001. Okay. Now see, x is a discrete random variable. So for given problem, x can take the values of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because there are total 5 components. So we can say one component is in failed state, no component is in failed state, 2 component is in failed state, and so on. So these are the values that the random variable will take. Then the first question is calculate the mean number of failures, and the formula is NP, where n is the number of components. In this case it is 1, 5, and p is the probability of occurrence of event, and here what is interested, number of failed components, and its probability is 1 chance in 100 failing. So 1 divided by 100 is 0.01. And if you simplify this, you will get the mean number of failures equal to 0.05. Similarly, you may be interested to know the variance, and the formula is n multiplied by p multiplied by q. So number of components 5, probability of occurrence of the event, that is 1 divided by 100 is 0.01, and q is 1 minus p. So 1 minus 0.01 is 0.99. Put all these values, and upon simplification you will get variance as 0.05. So this is how you can calculate the variance. Then the next question is the probability of exactly one failure. So if you inspect the component, then what is the probability that you will get exactly one failure and all remaining components are in operating state? So for that, we will use probability density function. And this is the equation for the set, and which is equal to n factorial. So we know that n is total number of components, which is 5, divided by n minus x, where x will take value 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in this case, x will take value exactly 1. So in this case, x will be 1. Multiplied by x factorial into p raised to x. So p is the probability of success. Here you can see, and its power will be x, which is 1. Then 1 minus p, probability of failure, its power is n minus x. So what we will do, we will put all these values in the equation. So n factorial, 5 factorial, this n will be 5, so here it will be a 5, minus 1 factorial into 1 factorial into 0.01 raised to 1 into 1 minus p, where p is 0.01 raised to 5 minus 4. So upon simplification, you will get 0.05, and its meaning is the probability of getting exactly one failure is 0.05. So this is how we can apply binomial distribution to solve a given problem. We will go ahead and we will try to solve the problem by using quotient distribution. So the first important thing is that initially the binomial distribution is derived in 1817, and in 1837 the quotient distribution is derived. I guess I used the wrong year for binomial distribution, but first binomial distribution is derived and then quotient distribution derived. And this particular distribution is also known as the law of small numbers. And why? I will tell you why this is called as law of small numbers. Then the quotient distribution is a special case of a binomial distribution. So this is also interesting to know. Otherwise we can say that the quotient distribution is derived from binomial distribution for a special case, and that case is small numbers. Again here P is the probability of success, Q talks about failures, and where the value of P or Q are very, very small. So we can say that out of 1 lakh components, 1 or 2 are in failed state. So that probability of failure is very, very small, because 2 divided by 1 lakh, that value will be very small. So the interesting thing about Poisson distribution is that it talk about very small numbers, that is outcome is very small. 2 components are defective among 1 lakh components, so outcome is very, very small. And n is large, so total population is 1 lakh, and how many failures are there? Only 1 or 2. So population is large and P or Q is very small, and that's why if such type of problem is there When you read the problem and you identify such scenario, instead of binomial, you must go for Gaussian distribution. Again, the average number of successes NP or failures NQ is finite and generally denoted as lambda. And mathematically, let x be the discrete random variables representing the number of random occurrences of event in a specific time. Let's say x is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. The Gaussian probability density function is given as. So we can use this particular formula, e raised to minus lambda into lambda raised to x upon x factorial. And this is the probability that will be x successes in n trials, the probability of success in each trial being p, where lambda is mean number of successes and which is given as np. We will take example so that you will understand in a better way. So just like a probability density function, there is a cumulative distribution function CDF, and which is given by this equation. And these are the sum of the other parameters. So mean is denoted by lambda. Variance also can be calculated as lambda. Then there are n number of applications of Gaussian distribution. Number of failures of an electric motor in 6 months due to switch failure. The number of defects in unit area of a type of cloth. And third example could be number of machines queuing up for repair in a shop floor. So there are such type of problems that can be solved by using Gaussian distribution. Example will give you more insight. So let's take one example. Let x be the discrete random variable representing the number of failed components among 5 independent and identical components. So here you can see that n is 5, of which each component has 1 chance in 100 failing. So the probability of failure is also given, 1 divided by 100. And what you have to calculate? Mean number of failures, variance, and probability that exactly 1 failure will observe. So as there are 5 number of components and x is a random variable, so x will take the values between 0 and 5, because out of 5, 0 will be defective, 1 will be failed, 2 will be failed, up to 5 will be failed. So these are the 6 different values that x can take. So these are the discrete values associated with x. Now, in order to calculate the mean value or variance, you can use the formula NP, where n is number of components, which is 5 given in the problem. P is the probability of occurrence, and which is given as 1 divided by 100, 1 chance in 100. So answer is 0.01. So n is 5, put into the equation, p is 0.01, answer is 0.05. Then the probability of exactly 1 failure is that can be calculated by using this formula. Here we already calculate the value of lambda, so put the value of lambda. Then we are interested in getting knowing probability of getting exactly 1 failure. So x will take value 1. So we'll put x is equal to 1, and upon simplification you will get 0.05. So we can say that there is a 0.05 chance that exactly 1 failure will observe. So that's it from my side for today's session. Today's session we discussed Bayes theorem, then the variables, discrete random variable, continuous random variable. Along with that, we saw the Poisson distribution and binomial distribution.